everyone. I'm Melissa McAllister, and you're listening to The Melissa Made Show. Now, for decades, I've dedicated myself to helping women break the cycle of dieting, navigate through all the fads, and change their lives through my nutrition coaching. Now, each week, I'm going to talk about everything from deep nutrition, mindset, self-care, the ideal workout routine, tips on how and why to implement intermittent fasting in your life, my favorite recipes that are not only crowd pleasers, but they're actually healthy for you, and so much more. Now, with small and consistent changes, you can defy aging while living a happier, healthier, and more heart-filled life. I'm so excited to show you it's possible with the right strategies that are so simple to adopt.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Melissa Made Show. So as you can see, I'm in my office again, and this is the very first time that I am doing an interview with someone in my house instead of Mick's shop. And who better to do it with than my good friend, Dr. Lauren. And she knows that if I screw up or we screw up or we by chance have to redo it, she will totally understand. So I don't think that's going to happen. She says I sound fantastic, and we've done solo podcast and they've worked out really well. So this is a long time coming. There's nobody on the planet that I would love to sit and talk more about all things. I mean, love, life, travel, but especially health, because her and I align so much. And our story of meeting was we met through Beachbody. She had filled out one of my forms online about coaching. And my assistant, Kelly, actually said, you got one of your applications and it's a doctor. And I rolled my eyes and I'm like, oh, okay. She's like, well, she'd like to talk to you on the phone. And I'm like, really? And Lauren now knows how much I hate talking on the phone. Yeah, but
True
I'm like,
introvert.
But I'm like, okay. And so I got on the phone with her and fell in love with her instantly. And then I got my hopes up and I'm like, oh man, I hope she's not too good to be true. She really wasn't. She's incredibly humble. Like I just said in my story, she's beautiful. She can dance like none other. She's got a huge heart. She's beyond intelligent. But what makes her so special, and I'm about to ask her to kind of tell her story for you, is just where she started in this whole journey of health and to where she is today, and how much you, my followers, her followers, people in general have impacted her decision to make all of these tremendous changes in her life to help more people. And so we decided today we're going to talk about metabolic health, because that's probably, in our humble opinion, the most important thing that you could be focusing on your health journey today. And so without further ado, I want to say naturopath, functional medicine doctor, Lauren Fitzgerald, and more importantly, one of my dearest friends who, and let's just put it out there. I tell her this let's make her blush. I tell her this all the time. If I was to bat for the other team, she'd be my girlfriend.
No, you're going up there.
Yeah, 100%. If I ever decided that. So Mick, you've got competition. I would totally, she'd be my girlfriend. I'd marry her up. I'd take such good care of you, Lauren.
You would. Well, I know I've told you
anyway,
this multiple times, but you have such a gift of, and I don't know who originally said this quote, but people will never remember what you said, but they'll remember how you make them feel. And you have such a gift of making people just feel amazing and heard and seen and loved and appreciated. And so thank you for always being that friend for me. So thank you for my introduction. And if I batted for the other team, you better believe you'd be my girl.
And we've already traveled and slept together in the same bed. So we kind of know what we're getting ourselves into. So
totally.
Anyway, so I would love for you to start by giving our audience kind of a glimpse into, your decision to go into medicine and how you started and how you've transitioned to, your residency all the way to where you are today. So people get an idea just honestly how big your heart is and how much you care about helping other people.
Cool. Well, I will make this story short because I believe that no matter how much I know, people are going to come away from this with the baseline of stories, right? And so my story is very unique. The fact is that I started in the health and fitness industry really early at 16. I was blessed enough to see both my parents always exercise, eat healthy. I was a dancer in a dance studio literally since I was 3. So I have had a healthy lifestyle portrayed to me as an example from my parents. And I've lived it really much my whole life. Started teaching aerobics at 16. I went to college a year early because I realized like, I want to use my brain to help other people. So I knew graduating high school early would start this 12-year process of undergrad for 4 years, med school for 4 years, and residency for 4 years, a little bit earlier. So I started med school at 21, and I was, one of the healthier people in my med school class, one of the healthier people in my residency. People would come to me if they, were struggling getting healthy and, come to me for advice. So I was always that person who was interested in the health and fitness world. Back in the day when you bought magazines, I would buy the health and fitness magazines and follow their nutritional advice. Because, in medical school, most medical schools teach zero about nutrition. And then, I started teaching aerobics again after residency when I'm 29 years old. I'm done with my anesthesia residency. I'm ready to be a private practice anesthesiologist. And my husband at the time, he's now my ex-husband. We're good, but that's another story. But he was military. And so we got stationed in northern Japan. And in northern Japan, there were no good fitness classes, specifically no good dance fitness classes. So I was like, you know what, I'll just teach my own. So I was an anesthesiologist by day and a fitness instructor by night. And really that just kind of ignited my own passion of the fitness aspect and my love of dance. But also I realized how much my influence could help other people learn how to create healthy lifestyles, because it's not easy if you haven't been given that example by a parent or both parents. And so I found a lot of people that were coming into my class, this was the first kind of exercise that they'd really ever done. And, I always say there's a dancer inside of us all. I didn't say a good dancer, but a dancer inside of us all. I mean, you have your moves.
I had my moments.
Yeah.
For about 3 seconds.
Totally. But I realized that, my influence, outside of the operating room was having much more impact than it was in the operating room. And not to say that, people in the operating room aren't important. I mean, there is definitely a need for that niche of people, but the whole reason that I went to med school was because my passion to help other people learn to be healthy and happy. So I started this YouTube channel real fast. It's called Club Fitness. I literally started it to help my Japanese locals and my military people be able to dance with me no matter where I lived in the United States, because we were coming back from Japan. And that was when I realized, like, you know what, if you can make money doing something that you're passionate about, which I was so passionate about: fitness, exercise, nutrition, supplementation, just healthy lifestyle in general. And that's really when I found you, because I started to dig into all of the educational resources that I wasn't taught in medical school. And so, the beginning of when podcasts weren't quite as popular, I was digging deep into podcasts. I heard someone in the operating room talk about fatty coffee, and the LA Lakers were drinking this fat coffee, this butter coffee before, and that got my interest, right? And so I started, that basically led me to intermittent fasting, how I found you. You were being interviewed by Chalene Johnson. I don't think that podcast is available anymore, but that's how I found you. And there was something about your voice that resonated. And I was like, this is a like-minded person. So I looked you up and I quietly followed you online. And when I realized that, the whole health coaching aspect really plays into what I'm passionate about. And that's, where we met in 2015. It was shortly after that I left my lucrative practice as an anesthesiologist because it didn't align with my purpose. And I really believe my purpose is to take my life experience, my passion for, educating people on all things, how to be healthy. And it didn't really align with coming into the OR every day and putting people to sleep and coming back the next day and doing the same thing. So I left my anesthesia practice, and fast forward a few years later, I'm here now practicing functional medicine, and I am an MD. There's a lot of people that practice functional medicine that have different letters behind their name. And as long as you keep in your scope of practice, you can have a chiropractor that practices functional medicine within the scope of practice of a chiropractor. You can have MDs and DOs. And so this is where, different experience and scope of practice is, benefiting some people, others not. But my goal for all of my patients is to ultimately get them optimized, get them to a place where everything all the health concerns that bring them to me as a new patient, typically stuff that has been failed by Western medicine doctors, all of those things are optimized no matter what decade of life they're at. I want to get most patients off of pharmaceuticals, if not completely off of their pharmaceuticals, at least on minimal doses. But we do that with a complete overall approach, the functional medicine approach, which is not just here, have this diet and take these supplements and come back in 6 months. It's a total body approach. And metabolism, I believe, is one of the core problems that brings a lot of patients to me. So when you were asking, what should we talk about? I'm like, I can't think of a better topic to talk about. Trying to keep it in under an hour is going to be challenging.
Yes, 100%. 100%.
No, go ahead. Well, I was just saying, two people like you and I working together is ideal for a patient who has underlying metabolic issues, because I function as the doctor, you function as the nutritionist, coach, and we come together and give a patient so many more tools to help them unlearn their bad habits that got them to this place and heal their body naturally.
Yeah. And that's where it starts, is lifestyle behaviors, I think, is really big. We have this problem, dare I say, that, it's a blessing and a problem at the same time. You've got wonderful people who finally have the opportunity on social media to put themselves out there and to help educate people and to kind of get rid of the nonsense. And then you have people out there that kind of add to the nonsense and confuse the heck out of people. And I know both of us have people coming to us. So I always get that, well, I eat relatively healthy. I don't understand why I can't lose weight. And then it's like, well, let's talk about what you're eating. And then it's like, whoa. So my first question for you, because I think it's the one that people are really having a hard time letting go of, is the idea of calories in, calories out, which
Can we just put a knife through that heart and kill that notion once and for all today?
We are our metabolisms are so much more complex than just the simplicity. I mean, you have to think about, your BMR, RMR, TEF, all of these things, all of those acronyms for how the body works and how it handles different types of food, the timing that you eat, how much you eat. But yet people are still told that all that matters is how many calories you're bringing in and how many calories that you're expelling in a day. So you want to shed some light on that?
God, where do I start?
I know, it's a big one.
I mean, so first of all, if someone comes to me with that, I will ask them, so how's that been working for you? Because that calories in, calories out, it's just energy. It's just a physics equation, has failed 99% of people that have used it to lose weight. Yet they keep coming back and trying it in a different guise, meaning Weight Watchers or, I mean, I don't want to, throw shade on any of the programs that it's caloric deprivation, but long-term weight loss does not happen when you just do the calories in, calories out. If we were just a physics system, a closed system, okay, maybe, but we're not. We're a biological system, which means that we've got all of these complicated hormones that play massive roles in how everything works. And so while calories, they are a function of the total equation, but they're not relevant. The entire equation. Yeah, they're not the entire equation. So I really, once a person can get past that true core belief that we've all been brainwashed to believe, because these big companies make a lot of money off of our ignorance, really, and our just blind faith and believing that, oh yeah, this is it. Yet let's look back at the last 40 years and just the obesity trends in general. I mean, the numbers are like staggering.
Yeah.
So we need to get rid of that notion.
Yeah, absolutely. And so one of the things that I think is detrimental to the women that I help, which I'm sure are the same women that you will see a gorgeous fitness influencer that, her job is to live in the gym, and maybe she doesn't have any kids, maybe she's not in a relationship, there's not a lot of social life, so diet is spot on all the time. And you're led to believe that, oh, if I exercise, if I follow the exercise that this person does, and if I follow the diet that they do, then I'm going to eventually look just like them. But there's just too many factors, even to the point of how much do you move during the day outside of that, just talking about your NEAT. And one thing I really want to encourage you guys is to look at your social media and the people that you're following and looking for inspiration. If it's just, she's gorgeous, she inspires me to get my ass in the gym, fantastic. But also follow those real life women that have lives that are similar to you, that can give you wonderful advice and helpful tips on how to manage not over consuming calories when you have 4 children at home. That is so hard.
Yeah.
And she's going to give you real life tips on how to, be able to overcome the temptation to constantly pick, versus the person that you're following thinking is going to help you with that lifestyle that has never even lived in that realm yet.
Well, can we just first talk about how those people are on a cellular level? Because it was just last week that someone shared, an Instagram account, which I won't call out, but basically this Instagram account was saying that you cannot be healthy if you're a female and you have 6-pack abs and blah, blah, blah. And while I think the point that person was trying to make was that a lot of people that you follow online that do have 6-pack abs, they're not healthy. I totally agree with that. If you look at them on a cellular level and their habits, a lot of them have eating disorders that they hide very well, that they don't show on social media. They keep all of that. A lot of them take prescription drugs like fen-phen or phentermine. Fen-phen was actually banned because of all the cardiac, but the phentermine still is used by weight loss clinics, which blows my mind. So a lot of those people that look so perfect and healthy on the outside with 6-pack abs, if you look at their labs, they're trash. So I think that was the point that person was trying to make. But, examples like you and my friend Jenny McCormick, who, I grew up with in Waco, Texas. I mean, y'all both have 6-pack abs and on a cellular level are super healthy. So it can be done, but metabolically speaking, these people are ultimately end up really not healthy in the long run. And
Right.
It's devastating because they're setting this unrealistic expectation for the average person. And the average person needs help with the basics of let's unlearn all of these little things that add up to making me not the healthiest, hormonally, metabolically. And then let's unlearn those and relearn some healthy habits that over time build up and get you back to homeostasis with your hormones, which is basically hormones are balanced and your metabolism is at its very best.
Yeah, totally agree with that. And we're going to start getting into the sciencey stuff because you're very good. You're very good at this and very good at explaining it. Like I said in my stories, you guys, she's just one of the best to follow because she dances and she just does. I mean, if we weren't friends, I would still follow her just to stay up on my education. She's very good at that. But I want to talk really fast. And you shared macronutrients. So, we have proteins, fats, and carbs, all of them important in your diet. But when it comes to having a healthy metabolism, is there any advice that when you work with patients on their macronutrients, one more than the other? Do you believe in like carb cycling and timed nutrition and all that stuff? Intermittent fasting, you can talk about that, but totally. Just your food, the macronutrients and how much to eat, when to eat, and what quantities of each one.
I don't necessarily go there instantaneously. I definitely have some patients that we look at counting macros and that kind of stuff. But for most patients, I don't go directly there because ultimately I don't think it's a healthy habit to count your macros and calories every single day. Who wants to live life like that? And the fact is, if you can teach the patient, the client, basic understanding of macronutrients. You've got the three macronutrients: fat, protein, and carbohydrates. Of the three, two have essential, like you can't live life without essential fatty acids and essential amino acids, but there are no essential carbohydrates. That does not mean that you should never eat carbohydrates. I don't want to villainize carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are villains for a certain patient population, for sure. And we will talk about the metabolically unhealthy and how certain kinds of carbohydrates are not the greatest for those people. And I mean, let's look at the last 3 years and what happened in this world, and the ones that were getting hit the worst by that terrible virus were the metabolically sick. But long story short, our body, I always tell patients, look, my job as an anesthesiologist was way harder than my job as a functional medicine doctor, because all I'm doing is trying to get patients back to living the way humans were designed to live by God. That's my belief, right? I believe that we were meant to eat animals from land, fish from water, and then plants when they're in season, right? And we were not meant to eat food that had barcodes. And while I'm not villainizing barcodes, but the less food, and I air quotes for the people that are listening to podcasts, food that you eat with barcodes, the better, because it gets you closer to the way humans have been eating. When it comes to macronutrients, the carbohydrate count becomes a little bit more important when you have someone on the insulin resistance, pre-diabetes, type 2 diabetes curve, right? And of course, we were talking about this before we started recording, but I'm working with a loved one right now who is African-American and has a family history very strong of type 2 diabetes. This person has exercised regularly his entire life. He eats relatively healthy compared to probably 98% of Americans. And his, annual visit with his primary care doctor says, yeah, you're great. But I have a feeling, because I started testing his blood glucose, asking him to test his fasting blood glucose and postprandial blood glucose with just good old finger prick. And he's in the 90s and 100s, and Western medicine won't even tell you to start worrying about it until it's a prescribable drug on hand, like metformin, right? And, this is classic for, oh yeah, we won't worry about it yet, says the primary care doctor. So you're going to worry about it when it becomes a disease, is what I'm hearing. And, metabolic syndrome is not something that is even looked at in primary care because there's no drug for it. And Western medicine is all about learning how to treat diseases with pharmaceuticals, procedures, and surgeries. And so, the whole metabolic syndrome, which we can talk about real fast, the kind of the key findings of metabolic syndrome, you've got increased abdominal girth. So with women, and this actually varies a little bit, the numbers based on if you're, American versus Asian, whatnot. But overall, if a woman's abdominal circumference is more than about 35 inches and a man's abdominal circumference is more than about 40, that's factor number one, positive. If you have increased blood pressure, so the top number is above 130, the bottom number is above 90, either of those, consider, your elevated blood pressure. If you've got low HDL and high triglycerides, those are also factors. And then the impaired fasting glucose in general, above 100. And for me, I like, if it's above 90, I consider that you're in the gray zone. So that's metabolic syndrome. If you are positive for some of those, you should definitely be like, okay, something's going on. But this is where the next step of like, okay, well, Dr. Fitz, I just said yes to all of those. What do I do? Because my primary care doctor says I'm healthy. Great question. This is why we're having this talk today, because you're on that curve. And studies have shown that you can be insulin resistant for up to 13 years before the lab markers show that you are pre-diabetic. And then again, you can be in the pre-diabetic range for a good, 10, 15 years before you become type 2 diabetic. But the whole point is, let's catch it as soon as you are in the insulin resistant stage, so we can reverse it and you don't have to go down that path. So this is where Western medicine is failing everyone, because their metabolic health isn't being identified when it starts to be dysfunctional early on.
Yeah. And this is so long ago. I don't have where I learned this, and you can tell me if I'm totally off or what the numbers were. But I know that, when they were talking about cholesterol, the number for what was considered high cholesterol just keeps being dropped. And I think that's kind of the way that it's working with the, you getting your fasting blood glucose, that maybe it's getting a little bit higher, that let's just get it a little bit higher, just kind of skewing the numbers so that it gets to the point of don't worry about it, don't worry about it, don't worry about it, worry about it. Almost like that avocado that takes forever to get ripe. And then it's like, you better take care of it right now. This is a crisis. We need to get you on prescription. We need to, make a lot of changes instead of catching it early, like you say, which you absolutely can. And really fast, I think there's kind of controversy around things that you can do to help before you get to these stages. Like you and I both wear an Oura ring. We both wear CGMs. I think you have a lumen. I use the lumen. Even a measuring tape is a tool for you to check your waist circumference. These tools can help you really get a grasp of your own health for you. How are you doing as an individual compared to, just taking a guess or going to the doctor and being told, no, you're fine, everything looks pretty good. I mean, you always talk to me about the difference between what they have as a recommendation range and an optimal range. And
Correct.
I promise you want to be in the optimal range. Those recommended ranges are kind of garbage. They're huge. Totally. And you want to work with someone that will help you get in the optimal range. So can you talk about the things that you can do if you know that, it's hereditary, you can just feel it, that you've kind of not been taking care of yourself and things aren't working right, the things that you can do besides the eating better, of course, that we just talked about, but what else can you do to, gauge that?
Okay. So let's start with some free stuff that you can do. Okay. So first of all, I'm going to give tough love to the listener. You have to take ownership. Your excuses are only hurting you. They're not hurting anyone else. They actually might indirectly hurt other people when you have to get your foot chopped off because of out of control diabetes later in life, or you have a stroke that makes you where you can't wipe your ass later in life and someone has to take care of you. So indirectly, you ignoring your own health will hurt the people that you love most. But at the end of the day, no one's coming for you. You cannot expect the government to help you, take care of you. No one will come in and save you. So I'm giving the person tough love, like stop making excuses. They might be valid excuses, but at the end of the day, they're really only hurting you. So if you have got these habits that I'm going to talk about that are free that you can do, if they happen a couple times a week versus every single day, I'm giving you tough love and put your big girl panties on and stop making excuses and just get it done. So first thing is you have to prioritize sleep. I believe that metabolism ultimately goes down to the mitochondria. And if our mitochondria are dysfunctional, then every other system in the body has dysfunction, right? And our mitochondria cannot function if we are not prioritizing sleep. And so the Oura Ring is a great app. The iWatch was where I first started using the auto sleep before I got the Oura Ring. But our bodies, I always tell patients, our bodies do best. Like those listeners, and I know you're a parent, Taylor and Tanner were babies. Did they not do better when they went to bed at the same time and they woke up at the same time and they were on a sleep regimen, right? So 100%. I don't know why we think that we outgrow that. The human body does best with a sleep regimen, going to bed around the same time, waking up at the same time, right? But we've thrown in so many bad habits that set us up for bad sleep, poor quality sleep, inefficient sleep, not enough sleep. And if you are not prioritizing sleep, which you can do for free, then start there. Right. The second place and on my new patient evaluation for my functional medicine patients, it's literally on the first page is talk about, all of your sleep patterns. And as a former anesthesiologist, man, if you have sleep apnea, you have to get tested for it. A lot of people with sleep apnea, when you lose weight, the apnea will go away. Some people, that's just the way God made them. And you're going to have to use a CPAP every night. But if you are getting terrible sleep because of sleep apnea, you cannot expect to lose weight. Bottom line. So that has to be priority. So the sleep is first. The second is your food. People that listen to you and listen to me probably get tired of hearing us say this, but you cannot be your healthiest if you don't learn to cook and control what goes in your mouth. Bottom line. Our bodies were not meant to consume this franken food that are made by big food companies. It's just like if you had a car that runs on diesel and you bring it to a gasoline station and you put non-diesel gas into it, what is going to happen to that car? It's going to mess it up, right? And it's not going to function well. Or if you put olive oil in your gas tank, olive oil is healthy, but is your car going to function on it? No.
Nope.
So why do we see what we fuel our body as any different? Right. Mm-hmm. So you have to take ownership. Look, people are like, I have kids and they like snacks. Your kids shouldn't be eating that crap too. Do not buy the stuff. You have to take ownership. You are the adult that goes to the grocery store, that buys the food. The food in the aisles has barcodes. I'm not saying to not buy foods with barcodes, but if you read the ingredients, if you do not know what the ingredients are, if you can't pronounce them, first of all, look them up. And you'll find that most of them that you can't pronounce are chemistry made products or ingredients that are added to the food to make it hyper palatable so that you come back and eat it again and buy it again. It's a business model. These food companies know what they're doing and they've got you. And so you've got to basically unhijack your taste buds because they've been hijacked by all of this hyper palatable processed food. So you have to take ownership and change your food. The third thing is movement. And, you and I love the hardcore workouts. But I will say that as we, especially as females, get in the 40 range and beyond, oftentimes the hardcore HIIT workouts actually do more harm than good. But movement always does us good. So I always tell my patients, commit to minimum of 30 minutes of movement a day. I don't care if it's walking, yoga, a beach body workout, a gym workout, whatever, but our bodies were meant to be moving every day and not sedentary. And then the stress, and I probably should have mentioned stress first, because it is one of those things. I know you've heard me talk about the phenomenon of cortisol steal, but real quickly, cortisol is like a thief. It steals from the components, the building blocks, if you will, of other hormones when you have an excessive need to make more and more cortisol. So all that means is if you are constantly stressed from your work, your finances, your relationships, your kids, your health issues, all of the things, guess what? Your body will preferentially make cortisol over all of those other hormones. And that is why you have hormonal imbalances all over the place, and you will not be able to lose weight. I don't care if you're doing all of the other things. Stress has to be acknowledged, and it affects your blood glucose. It affects everything. So those are kind of the four, basically free pillars that a person can start focusing on. And
Dr. Lauren, if I can I just want to insert really fast, because I can hear my listeners in their head saying, my job is stressful, but I need my job. Understandable. Totally. There's some stress that you can't take out of your life, but how you cope with the stress or how you treat your body outside of that stressful situation with meditation or with just, gratitude or deep breathing, you can really help your body by dealing with the stress if you can't get rid of the stress. So don't think that, I don't want you guys just thinking, well, I'll work on everything else. I can't get rid of the stress. That's just one thing I can't change. Yeah. The hell you can't. You can change how you react to it. So sorry, carry on.
No, so true. And I challenge the person that uses that as an excuse. Go buy a glucometer. They're cheap. You can get them, at whatever pharmacy. Prick your finger, buy the little blood strips, prick your finger, do an experiment, and just do your fasting blood glucose in the morning when you wake up after a normal week of your normal stressful life. And then the next week, incorporate 10 minutes of meditation and really prioritizing that hour before you go to bed to disconnect from phone, from TV, from computer, from all of the things, to really just focus on getting everything right before you go to bed, and test your blood glucose, because they've done that. And science is very clear, and that doesn't cost you anything, but it takes discipline to turn this thing off and break that habit. So many people have the habit of just mindlessly scrolling online as entertainment. And while yes, the entertainment on the internet is real, but we know how terrible it is for us to ingest all of that, especially right before we go to bed.
Right. So before you move on to things that may not be free, don't forget about fasting, which is free.
Oh yeah. Totally. So intermittent fasting, it's been called so many different things. I don't think it even needs a name, because I believe that that's the way humans were designed to eat.
Right.
We were meant to feast and fast. And if you look at our energy systems, we have two energy systems that support both the feasting and fasting states, right? And so the example that I always like to use is the refrigerator in your main floor of your house versus the deep freezer in the basement. You typically, and we live here, or I live in Illinois. Knock on wood, right now it's not super cold, but typically in January it's like super cold. And so there's some days that you don't want to get out and go to the grocery store. And so you're going to just empty out your fridge, and then you don't want to go to the grocery store because it's like -30 below. So you're going to tap into your deep freezer, right? So you've got immediate energy versus the slow energy, right? The fact is that once you're done eating all of the food in your refrigerator, some people can't tap into the deep freezer because that door is locked. So imagine a person that's walking around with excess adipose tissue, and I don't call them fat, I call them excess adipose tissue, but the adipose is fat tissue, fat cells, right? So these people are walking around and they're hungry all the time and they can't lose weight. Why? Because the door to their basement to get to the deep freezer is locked by insulin, because insulin is constantly in their bloodstream. And as long as insulin is in their bloodstream, that door stays locked and they can't tap into that deep freezer of food. So the question is, well, then how do we stop that insulin from locking the door so we can tap into that deep freezer, i.e. your fat, your slow burning energy, right? And it's called you feast and fast, and you know what provokes your insulin from being secreted by your pancreas, right? And so feasting and fasting means that we eat 2 to 3 meals a day, and women typically do better with 3 meals. Men can get away with, because their hormones aren't quite as complicated as ours. So I've seen that women typically do well with the 3 meals a day. Whether it's an 8-hour eating window or a 10-hour eating window, or even a 12-hour eating window. I'll use 10 as a, an example. If I'm going to have a patient be on a 10-hour eating window, I tell them, I want you to eat 3 meals. I don't want you snacking, because snacking is not healthy. And we have to unlearn that belief that snacking is healthy, because that was one of the many lies that these big food companies have told us, that snacking eating every 2 to 3 hours is healthy for your metabolism. That's BS. BS.
Yeah.
But we were brainwashed. I mean, it took me forever to really just understand, like, oh no, that's completely wrong. So unlearn the habit of snacking. I promise your body, you will not die if you do not snack. and have 3 good meals with a nice balance of all of the really important macronutrients of real food. And if you are eating what you're supposed to at each meal, going 4 to 5 hours in between each meal is going to be fine, because the signals that this food as medicine is giving your body is, hey, we're good. We got everything we need. So essentially giving your body a break in between meals so your body can do the digestion, and then the insulin can go back down. And then the last time that you eat, don't eat anything until the next day. So I always tell my patients 2 hours is the minimum that I want you to not eat before you go to bed, but 3 hours is really ideal. And you and I both have seen, that in our Oura ring. When I eat close to bedtime for whatever reason, and yes, it happens to us, especially when we're in Bali, but but when you eat close to the time that you go to bed, it will disrupt your sleep. And so 3 hours is my kind of go-to. I go to bed early. So like, it's dark here. I literally was asleep last night by 8:30. So I'm done eating by 5:30. Right. And then I don't eat anything till about 7:30 the next day. And so I break my fast at about 7:30. So my eating window works with me best about 10 hours, and I eat about every 5 hours. But the whole reason why intermittent fasting, or however time nutrition, or whatever you want to call it, is working, is because you're giving your body a break from needing to create insulin. Because every time you eat, your body is like, okay, we need to secrete more insulin to bring that blood glucose down. And your body becomes resistant if you're constantly producing insulin all throughout the day, day in, day out, day in, day out.
And I also think it's not, insulin is obviously very, very relevant in this, but even just thinking you would not exercise several times a day. the bile that your body has to, excrete, all of the enzymes, you're constantly making your digestive system work constantly. There's never a time that it can just go, oh, thank you, I get a break. Because
Totally.
it takes a long time for food to go throughout your body. So whether you have just ingested it or you haven't gone through, eliminating it, if you really don't give your body that chance to, just your stomach or your small intestine, that there's a break, that there's enough time that that section of your body is like, oh, okay, I can rest. This is cool.
Totally.
I can repair. There's repairing that needs to be done to your digestive tract. And if you don't give it that rest, just like your muscles, if you're constantly lifting weights and you don't allow it to mend the muscle, it's not going to function right. So you got to think of it in that way as well.
Totally. So then let's talk about some non-free stuff that you can do. And this is going to be, I guess, more biased because I'm a medical doctor, but let's talk about lab testing. Now, some people, their primary care doctors will work with them. I'll just tell you, and I'm not throwing shade on primary care doctors. Most Western medicine doctors don't know what they don't know until Western medicine fails them in their own path. And that was kind of, I forgot to mention that part of my story. That's kind of an important part, but I was failed when I was about 35. That was when I was gaining weight for no apparent reason. I was teaching 4 hardcore classes of my Club Fit's fitness dance class. I was lifting in the gym. I was eating what I thought was healthy. I was following the, eat as soon as you wake up and eat every 2 to 3 hours. I was doing what all of the magazines said and what all of the health experts, air quotes, said. and I was gaining weight and it made no sense to me. And I knew that if I went to my primary care doctor, they would look at me like I was crazy because, relative to their average patient, I was healthier than most of them, but I knew that I was not my optimized best. So that's what brought me to Googling and finding a functional medicine doctor in Oklahoma where I lived at the time. And I realized, oh, better believe I'm insulin resistant. I think my fasting insulin was like almost 20. Which is not good. I always tell my patients, my goal for them for their fasting insulin is somewhere between about 3 and 5. The lower that you can get that number, the better. So that leads me to what I was about to say is that if you go to your primary care doctor and you ask for labs, they're going to get basically a chemistry and a CBC, which I'm just going to be honest, it doesn't tell me much. If your chemistry and CBC look bad, you got a lot of medical problems going on. And there, not to say that functional medicine can't help you, but like, it does not tell me a whole lot.
Are you ready to learn the secret behind how I continue to be so healthy? Well, it all comes down to science. If you've been listening to my show for a while now, you may have heard me mention something called the MAID diet. Yes, that's right. Because I'm so passionate about how learning about the effects that nutrition has on the human body, I always seek to learn as much as I can and apply that knowledge. One of my best learning tools has been self-experimentation. And now in my late 40s, I have to say, I've done a pretty good job. It's hard to find trustworthy, even accurate information in this country. Between the influence of big corporations with monetary agendas, the nutrition labels designed to deceive, and downright misleading information that you were taught in school, navigating food and nutrition with your optimum health in mind can be quite challenging. Take the food pyramid, for example. In an ideal world, I'm sure we would all love to eat pasta and baguettes for every meal. But that's simply not what's best for our bodies, our health, and our longevity. Now, I spent years developing the MAID diet in a way that I wish someone had taught me, and I break it all down in my MAID diet course. People are always asking me what I eat, so we start there. What I eat in a day and which foods are the most beneficial. So think something in between the Mediterranean and the paleo diet. It's a lifestyle plan that incorporates moderate protein, adequate fat, decreased carbs, and an introduction to intermittent fasting. But please, I want you to keep in mind, just because I say decreased carbs, I don't mean decreased carbs in what your body needs. I just mean decreased carbs in what the standard American diet has become. You still get plenty of quality carbohydrates, just not in the mass amounts we have been eating to get us into such an unhealthy state. And of course, we're going to talk about what foods to avoid because that's just as important. We even talk about how to eat healthy on the go because let's face it, we're busy and that's just life.
And then there's intermittent fasting. I share all of my favorite tips and tricks, and a lot of science are along the way. I could not say enough good things about intermittent fasting, and I'm honestly so surprised more people are doing it. You'll also learn how I've learned to balance my hormones and feel my best, because so many women struggle with this. And lastly, we cover the mindset behind making a change, because we all know that your mindset is the key to your success in anything that you do. So if you are struggling with diet in terms of feeling your best, or you are ready to take your health to the next level, I strongly recommend you check out this course. Now, the course is structured in 5 modules, 16 lessons, and a whole lot of research to back everything up. So I want you to visit my website, themaidediet.com or melissamaid.com, and you will see a tab for the course. Click on that to get access today and learn why you should be eating this way too.
Lauren, real fast, can you explain what those are? The chemistry is.
So a complete blood count stands for a CBC, and that basically tells you your hemoglobin, your hematocrit, your basically if you're anemic or not, right? Your chemistry gives you a whole panel of sodium, potassium, chloride. It gives you your renal function. So those are all really important things, but they're basics. And if all of those are not within normal limits, there's typically a lot of medical problems going on. So, an average, otherwise healthy person, those labs are really not going to tell me much, right? So going back to the person that I'm helping, identify probable underlying fasting or insulin resistance, I specifically wrote out a list of labs for him to ask his primary care doctor to order. He literally, and so those consist of, so when it comes to metabolic health, I always like to order not just a fasting glucose and hemoglobin A1C, which typically primary care doctors will order that, right? Which fasting glucose you can do on your own. You can buy a glucometer and test, and you can see that answer on a daily basis on your own. So, which I highly recommend people doing. Hemoglobin A1C is like a snapshot of what your blood glucose has been doing on average for about the last 3 months. But the fasting insulin is the third one. Like most primary care doctors either forget to order it or won't order it because they don't know what to do with it. And the fasting insulin tells me so much. So those 3 under the metabolic, I ask for a full thyroid panel, meaning more than just TSH. TSH stands for thyroid stimulating hormone, but I like to see, for example, what your free T3 and free T4 are doing. Those are the active metabolites of the thyroid hormone that determine your overall metabolic function from your thyroid hormone. I also like to see if there's antibodies. So I ask for an anti-TPO and an anti-thyroglobulin.
And I'm going to cut you off again because I'm annoying that way, but
no, I like it.
Can you share with them that, because I see this all the time, they will get their labs and they'll share them with me, and I'll just look at them for just kind of a general consensus, and they do get the TSH, and that's normal. And so they believe just because the only thing they tested was TSH and it came back air quote normal, that they're fine. And this is, you're asking for a deeper dive. And I always say, think of it as only checking your LDL or only checking your testosterone and not your estrogen. There's so many more hormones. And then by only them checking one, and that may be fine, does not mean that the thyroid is functioning normally, that they need to be their own advocate.
Totally. I cannot tell you how many people, how many of my patients have come to me because I did 2 thyroid videos. I'm talking about how so many Western medicine doctors fail a thyroid patient because they check your TSH and they tell you you're normal, but you have all of the symptoms of an underfunctioning thyroid. You have difficulty losing weight. You're cold all the time. You're lethargic. You have hair loss. You have dry skin. You have constipation. Like all of these symptoms can be from an underfunctioning thyroid with a completely normal TSH, but they don't look at your free T3, free T4, or let's talk about the patients, the thyroid patients that are actually on Synthroid, which is a synthetic thyroid hormone. Well, it only has T4 activity. So I have a lot of patients that literally the first patient that I actually got from that video was someone who had been on her same dose of Synthroid for like 15 years, but she had all of the symptoms, but her primary care doctor always told her, you're fine, your labs look good. And she was like, she felt unheard because she was like, but I don't feel fine. So of course we did a full thyroid panel. First of all, I've never seen antibodies so high before. So she had the form of hypothyroidism called Hashimoto's, which is the autoimmune. It's present in about 70% of hypothyroid patients, and it's mostly in females. Men can have it, but it's very predominant in females. And if you have a family history of it, you definitely need to get your antibodies checked. But I think her anti-TPO was like over 4,000. I mean, when I saw that, I was like, oh my gosh. So who knows how many years she has been attacking her own thyroid with antibodies from her autoimmune disorder. So she's one that probably will never be able to be off of prescription drugs. But what I did with her was, first of all, I made her 100% gluten-free and soy-free. And I always tell patients, look, I don't expect 100% from you because 100% is not realistic. But when it comes to gluten and soy with thyroid patients, I ask them, I need you to be 100%. I always start them on a particular thyroid support supplement. And then I switched her specifically from her Synthroid, which only gave her T4 activation of her hormone, and gave her Armored Thyroid, which is a natural desiccated thyroid. It's still a prescription drug, but natural desiccated thyroid hormones are basically from mammals. So I believe Armored Thyroid is porcine in nature. So they basically take a porcine thyroid, they desiccate it, dry it out, and put it into pill form. So you're getting active forms of both free T3, free T4, and a little free T1 and free T2, but those aren't quite as important as T3 and T4. So in the first 9 months, she lost 36 pounds and all of her symptoms went away.
Mind blowing.
Her primary care doctor was like, you're fine for 15 years. So, those full thyroid panel are really crucial for me. And then I always ask for vitamin D levels, because the amount of people that are vitamin D deficient is mind blowing. And I always tell patients the minimum I like to see their vitamin D is 40. And that is not what Western medicine will tell you. They won't even mark it low until it's like, I think 25. So those are some labs that you can ask your doctor to get, which they may or may not cost money, because sometimes doctors will be like, well, your insurance might not cover it. You need to tell them, I'm fine with that. Go ahead and order. Most likely your health insurance will cover those. It's not that crazy above and beyond. But crazy above and beyond labs that probably won't be covered by your health insurance are a lot of the labs that functional medicine doctors like myself order. I do a full panel, and I'll be honest, I spend somewhere close to $800-900 to get all of these labs done every single year. I get them so that I can use them as a teaching model for patients and for people that follow me online. But I did it on my Lauren Fitzgerald Facebook page, a few months ago, to show exactly, what I looked like on a cellular level, right? And those kind of like our micronutrient panel, it costs like $300, but if my body is working the way it's supposed to, all of my micronutrients should be optimized in that great range. Your health insurance is kind of like your home insurance. If your home gets hit by a hurricane, your home insurance should pay for, you to rebuild your home, right? But if you want to, upgrade the flooring in your home insurance is not going to do that, right? So our health insurance is there for, the big bad stuff. If you're hit by a car and you need multiple surgeries, yes, we need health insurance for that, but you cannot expect your health insurance to invest in you upgrading your systems. And so that's why, functional medicine labs, supplementation, those cost money, but you're either going to pay money now and prevent disease later, or you're going to pay big time and have a miserable last 2, 3, maybe even 4 decades of life.
Yeah. So really quick because I'm very non-confrontational. When you go see a doctor, which I shared with you yesterday, I went and saw a doctor, and she just instantly dismissed doing certain labs because she told me that they would come back normal. Just
totally. Was
100% sure. I would have liked to have still had them done, but I didn't have the confidence to say, no, can you still run them? Can you, if you can you reassure the audience that you have the right as the patient
100%. I mean, And I'm actually surprised that you didn't speak up and be like, no, I'd like to go ahead and get them ordered.
Yeah, I did. She was a little, a little intimidating. So I was like, okay.
Yeah. And this is why, like, my, the person that I'm helping figure out if he's insulin resistant or not, literally he called his primary care doctor and he had it on speakerphone, and I literally got on the phone. I'm like, hey, Dr. So-and-so, I'm actually a physician. I'm an MD, and I'm helping. And I asked him to, ask you if you could order fasting insulin. Can you? Oh yeah, absolutely. So doctors do not like to feel like they are, they don't know or understand. So oftentimes if you ask for labs that they're like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do with it, that's oftentimes why they'll say no. But you have to be your own advocate, because if your doctor is not helping you, then fire them and get another doctor. And you need to learn to be assertive and asking, these are the labs that I would like you to order.
Yeah. I love that.
And you can even, I always tell my loved ones, blame it on me. Say, you have a loved one that's an MD asking for this. And sometimes them hearing that alone, if they know that you have an MD overlooking your stuff, oh yeah, absolutely. I'll order it. Cause I'm going to call them out if they don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, I'm not telling people to lie, but
yeah. No, that's smart. Okay. So let's shuffle into, there's promising stuff out there. First and foremost, as I don't know if you have one on right now, but I'm wearing my CGM. I think it's just the coolest thing. I'm not obsessed with it. I don't like, I'm not a regularly scheduled checker. I just, I look at it, I wonder, how I'm doing right now. It's been a while since I've eaten, or, I had some popcorn. Wow. Did popcorn set me up? Oh, and funny, this is totally off subject. But maybe because when we were in Bali, terrible time. We went and we drank and bought some poopy coffee. It was wonderful. And we also bought the mangosteen tea, which I love. I've been drinking it, but Dr. Lauren, when I drink that by itself, it spikes my insulin.
Interesting.
And that's one of the things about this that I love is I would never have thought that it's the no sugar one, this tea for some reason gives me a pretty substantial spike. It's mind blowing to me. And that's why I love wearing this, designed for type 1 and type 2 diabetics. But as we were talking beforehand, these tools really help the masses amount of people who don't know they're insulin resistant or have metabolic syndrome see it firsthand and be like, whoa, I need to make changes, because you don't really necessarily feel it before it gets to the point that it starts to get hard to reverse. Absolutely. So you want to talk, and any and every other thing, tongue twister, that is available for people with metabolic syndrome.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about 3 things that, at least currently in the United States, you need a prescription for. So CGMs, armored thyroid or a natural desiccated thyroid, and the class of drugs that fit under, like Ozempic, which I did a video about that, which I'll end with that, because that's pretty amazing stuff. And, I always tell my patients, my goal is to get people off of pharmaceuticals, but because I'm an MD, I can use pharmaceuticals to help get them optimized and then hopefully get them off. Some, like the thyroid patient that I told you about, she'll never be able to get off of armored thyroid because she had probably 10 to 15 years of her antibodies attacking her thyroid, and it's probably not functional at all. So, but ultimately I can use prescription drugs because I'm an MD. So CGMs, first of all, I love CGMs. Mine just expired today, so I don't know if you can't see the little thing, but I wore it for the last two weeks. I'm actually going to call myself in a Dexcom. I've never used a Dexcom.
Love those.
Yeah. From what I understand, it's a little bit more accurate than the Abbott Freestyle Libre. The Abbott Freestyle Libre is what I call in for my patients, which is basically, it's a 14-day sensor. It does not hurt at all. You put it on the back of your arm, you use an app on your phone, you scan it, and it basically gives you a continuous, glucose of what you're doing over 24 hours. And it's awesome. It gives you so much data to understand how not just food affects you, but stress affects you, how exercise affects you, how, sleep affects you. Absolutely. So when prescribed and given to a person that is, the science mind, it is a valuable tool. And now oftentimes I will just wear it to just keep me in check. because
it's an accountability partner for sure.
Totally. I'm like, oh, I'm not, because like last night, I'm one of the local businesses that's in with this local holistic nutritionist. She does this 30 days to feeling fabulous for locals. There's about 300 people in it. And she had a meet and greet with all of the people that are hosting. And so cool. I spoke and she had these really healthy paleo treats that had all good ingredients, but I did not get that because I knew what it would spike. And plus, it was close to bedtime, so I wasn't going to eat it for that reason as well. But the CGMs you need a prescription for them. You wear it for 14 days and you become your own N of one, your own science project. So if you looked on my Instagram, the Dr. Lauren Fitz account, under highlights, back the first time that I wore the CGM, I literally experimented on myself for 21 days. And for it was fun. And it's just so much data. It's a lot of stories to watch, but for people that are, thirsty for knowledge, you can see I did an experiment with a different diet every 3 days. So I started off with a standard American diet and I showed the crazy peaks and spikes, peaks and valleys of my continuous glucose monitor. Then I went to, I think the next was the low fat diet, which, a lot of people for whatever reason are still following. Then I went to a vegan diet. And then I went to pretty much the MAID diet, the high fat, low carb diet. And then I went to a keto, and then I went to carnivore, and then I went to a water fast. So each of those diets I did for 3 days, and I showed exactly what my blood glucose was doing. You can do that. You don't have to do it for 3 days. You can do it for 1 day, but understanding, okay, my typical breakfast, which I thought was healthy that has oatmeal and fruit and yogurt, holy bananas, my blood glucose spikes like crazy, but let's add some, eggs and maybe some walnuts and maybe, put some collagen protein in that oatmeal, and well, it doesn't spike it that much because you are now learning like how food affects your blood glucose. And the more you can understand that, the less spikes, peaks and valleys, roller coaster ride like effect you have, the better overall of your metabolic health. And you want hills and valleys for that continuous glucose monitor. And for people that don't have a doctor that will call that in, get a glucometer and test your blood glucose first thing in the morning. Test it before you eat. Test it 2 hours after you've eaten. The fasting glucose, I always like to tell patients, I want you to be in the 70s or 80s. When you're in the 90s, you're already on my radar. Like you're on the way, you're probably insulin resistant already. But the 2 hour postprandial fasting or blood glucose should be back down to that normal fasting glucose before you started eating. And if it's not, then you've got some underlying metabolic issues there. And so you don't have to get the CGM, but the CGM, I always tell patients, if you have a Costco membership, Costco is definitely the cheapest place because your health insurance is not going to cover it because you're not diabetic. I believe that 2 14-day sensors cost about $60 from the Costco pharmacy. So that's typically where I'll call that prescription in, and literally just ask your primary care doctor, can you call this in? I've been reading a lot about it and I want it. And if they won't, fire them and get someone else that will. I mean, truly.
Yeah.
Then the prescription of Armour thyroid. So this is where, I will tell patients, I'll look at their labs, and if they have been strictly gluten-free, soy-free, and taking a good thyroid support supplement and their numbers still aren't ideal, then that's where I will add in a pharmaceutical like NP thyroid or Armour thyroid. And, plus or minus, your health insurance may or may not cover that. But because officially speaking, a lot of those patients, I don't give the diagnosis of hypothyroid, but it's hypothyroid function for sure. And so, going to a Costco pharmacy is going to be cheaper if you have to pay out of pocket.
To cut you off again, yeah. Is that prescription very expensive? Meaning that if, you're okay.
Not at all. Not at all. I only had catastrophic health insurance up until this year. I finally got real health insurance because I thought I was going to have knee surgery. I don't think I'm going to have to. So now I get to pay a lot of money for my Blue Cross Blue Shield every month. So, which is dumb, but I've been paying out of pocket for my Armour thyroid because I have Hashimoto's that I've reversed. But the out-of-pocket 90-day prescription, I believe, costs like about $100. So it's about $1 a day. Yeah. That being said, those people that take thyroid medicine, you have to take it first thing in the morning, and you don't necessarily, it's not time of day. That's when I take it, but you have to take it 45 minutes away from anything outside of water. So even coffee, definitely don't take it near supplements. I had one patient who, I didn't realize that she was taking her thyroid at night, and I start 100% of my patients on magnesium because almost everyone's deficient in magnesium. And her thyroid numbers went out the roof because basically she was taking it at the same time. Yeah. So that was one of my earlier, beginning days of practicing functional medicine. Yep. Now I know better. I make sure and educate the hell out of them. So yeah, but it's really a great tool. And some people only need it for, a period of time, and other people will need it forever. And there's nothing bad about that.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that their thyroid numbers are in that optimal range. Like you were talking about, like I've sent you that chart multiple times.
Yes. Yes.
So then the next class of drugs is this class of drugs that is fairly new in the diabetic world. So real fast, up until I believe this class of drugs came out about 7 years ago. Up until then, the typical standard of care for diabetic patients was, once your hemoglobin A1C is above a certain point, now you're officially pre-diabetic, and then let's write you the first prescription for metformin. Now, out of all the different kinds of diabetic drugs, metformin is actually the only one that has one of the side effects is weight loss. It's minimal weight loss, but it's better than the rest of them, because the rest of the diabetic medications, weight gain is a side effect of a lot of them.
Not good.
No, exactly. And, the generic, eat healthy and exercise advice that their primary care doctor gives them does not set them up for success. And unfortunately, if you go to the ADA, the American Diabetic Association, they are in bed with these big food companies. And so the advice that you get from their website is completely misinformation, in my opinion. And it's completely biased, and it just basically sets people up for worsening their diabetes. So I would not advise them to follow the ADA's recommendations for how to eat once you've been given the diagnosis of prediabetes. So then you start this cascade of pharmaceuticals. Typically the next kind of drug is a drug like glipizide. And then ultimately, almost everyone ends up on insulin, and we know insulin makes people gain weight. And, end stage diabetes is terrible. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. You have, you lose your feet, you lose your sight, you lose your kidney function and need dialysis. You have, many strokes and heart attacks, and you lose your sight. I mean, it's terrible because our body was not meant to live at this high glucose range. So this new class of drugs that came around, and a lot of people know the drug Ozempic, so I'm just going to call it Ozempic, but the generic name for it is semaglutide. And so this drug was originally only created for diabetics. And in fact, most health insurance companies will only cover it for diabetics. And so that's why people that have realized that it helps regulate your insulin and gets your body back to a more homeostatic place with the way insulin is working in your body. And of course, one of the side effects of that is weight loss. So a lot of patients are asking their primary care doctors to prescribe them that just for the weight loss effects, and their health insurance companies are not covering it. So it's like $1,000 a month. But the side effects, the side effect of weight loss is very real. And I started using it in my patients that were either insulin resistant or already pre-diabetic last spring, and 100% of them had amazing changes on it. So, but again, a question that I get for people that are thinking about, getting on this is this a forever drug? And I believe when you do it the functional medicine route, meaning that you change all of the things and you learn how to make it a lifestyle and not just a Band-Aid of this is my Band-Aid prescription that's going to cover up whatever, then it doesn't have to be a forever drug. I always tell my patients that are on it, we're going to get you to your ideal body weight, make sure that you can maintain it, and then wean you off of it because you've learned all of the other things. And there's plenty of other functional medicine doctors that are doing this that have shown that they've been able to do that with their patients. So, but it is a once a week injection. So you do have to stab yourself. It's the tiniest needle though.
So I have two questions about that. The first one is, can it be used just for a weight loss drug? Like if somebody doesn't have, insulin or high blood glucose issues, can they just use it, or would it set them into hypoglycemia to where it's unhealthy for them?
So most people that are carrying extra weight, and I mean, I'm talking like even as little as like an extra 10 pounds, most of them have some sort of an underlying insulin issue, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's why it's helpful to most people. I would never start someone on it that is at their ideal body weight, because their insulin and their metabolic health is ideal. And so, someone that, like, I hate even giving her recognition, but Kim Kardashian, the fact that anyone follows, I'll stop. If you can't say anything nice, don't say it, right? My mama taught me better. But someone like her that was already super thin and then started it just to go super, super thin, that's
I didn't
terrible.
know that.
Yeah. But someone, and I have patients that are struggling with that last 10 pounds that absolutely, I will start you on this and we'll get you to that ideal body weight and then we'll get off of it. But the side effects, the worst side effects are the nausea. And I always let my patients know that are on it. One, you have to stay hydrated. So create habits. Like I always tell my patients, make it stupid simple. So like, this is a 40-ounce water bottle, right? So how I try and get 3 of these in, sometimes I get 4, but for sure 3. So in the first hour of my day, I drink 40 ounces. Right. And then from that point until noon, my morning, that's when I drink the second one. And then from noon till the time I'm done eating, I drink the second. Or the third, so that I'm not peeing in the middle of the night. I do not want to disrupt my sleep because I've got a full bladder. Right. So for me, not drinking past about 7 o'clock will guarantee that I won't pee. Everyone's different. Experiment with yourself, but hydration, super important, and making sure that the quality of water. So put that trace minerals in your water like Melissa and I do. I mean, you and I both do the Mountain Valley water and then put the trace minerals in. That is the way to make sure that you stay adequately hydrated. And then I also tell them you have to make sure that you get your protein, because one of the side effects of this class of drugs is decrease in appetite. And so you're literally going to be like, okay, I've never had a problem finishing my plate. And now I'm like, I can't finish my plate. You have to prioritize protein. So I just make it stupid simple. If your ideal body weight is, 120 pounds, then divide it by 3 and try and have that be your goal of protein, right? About, 40 grams of protein at each meal. Cause most of the time they won't get it, but if I can have them aim high, right, then maybe hopefully they'll at least get 30 grams at each meal. But I ask them to focus on those 2 things. Continue weight training, because muscle mass is super important and you do not want to lose muscle mass. And then the side effects of the nausea and vomiting are very minimal for people that do that. There are still some people that get those side effects, and they're typically within the first 24 to 48 hours after that weekly injection. And it gets a little bit better after the first 2 to 3 weeks of being on that drug. Some people, it takes 6 months to get to their ideal body weight. Sometimes it takes less, sometimes it takes more. But the worst side effects are the nausea, vomiting. There is a very small amount of people, or not even people, in studies, pancreatitis is one of the risk factors. So if you have a history of pancreatitis, they don't recommend you doing it, but they've only shown pancreatitis in mice. So they've never seen it actually in humans. So, I haven't had any patients with a history of pancreatitis to start it on. So I haven't crossed that bridge yet, but that is a potential, side effect.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very, very promising.
Yes.
So the last thing I'd like to share with, which I think is the one that people don't talk about enough or don't really think that it affects them personally, are these endocrine disruptors that really mess with the metabolism, your plastics and your pesticides and even, your skincare products. There's junk out there that actually, I want you to hear from a medical doctor, that actually does, will mess up, your systems and make it harder for you to have energy, to sleep well, to lose weight. So you want to just talk really quick about these endocrine disruptors real quick?
Yes. It's so people underestimate how much they actually do affect. And when you say endocrine, that all that means is hormones. So hormone disruptor. So I used to love those Glade plugins because they made my house smell so fresh. And then when I realized that those were one of the worst endocrine disruptors, I was like, get it out. We are bombarded by toxins on a daily basis, and it's next to impossible to be toxin free if you live in the United States or really in the world. I mean, you really do have to live on a farm in the middle of nowhere to not be exposed to stuff. And then still you're probably exposed to a few things, but people underestimate how much these little things that they put on their body. So their skincare, their hair care, their, what they keep in their house, their mattresses, the clothes that they wear. I don't want to give anyone a OCD, conniption fit over, obsessing over everything, but they really do affect your hormones. Absolutely. Absolutely. So BPA, of course you want to stay away from BPA, but guess what? Plastics have so many other chemicals. BPA is definitely a bad one. That's why you should never take a receipt. Literally anytime I'm because the receipt paper at, any stores are full of BPA. But I don't have any plasticware anymore. My to-go containers are all glass. These toxins disrupt your hormones, whether they're breathed in, whether they're put on your skin, whether they're ingested. Pesticides, the dirty dozen versus the clean 15. If you can't afford to buy all organic produce, at least understand what the dirty dozen is, because those top 12 dirtiest produce or plants are the ones that are most highly sprayed with pesticides. And pesticides, I mean, they're basically like dropping a napalm bomb in your gut, and you're guaranteed to have gut issues because you're ingesting these pesticide laden plants. And then the clean 15 are the plants that if you can't afford to get everything organic, you're probably safe not buying organic plants that are in this category. But the closer that you can get to, again, living the life that I believe God created us to live, and we were not meant to be exposed to all of these, chemicals and products that just are normal in our day-to-day life. So they do affect your hormones, and your hormones will affect your metabolism, bottom line.
Absolutely. And so it's just like what you said, you don't want to start obsessing about any and everything, but there are small changes that you can make that you won't even really notice, but you have to know that they're damaging you on some small level. And so if there's, you could just make those, just buy a different shampoo or get the glass instead of the plastic. Those kind of things will make such a huge difference. You can never get rid of most of them, like you said, but you can make simple shifts that will make a big difference in your health overall, that won't make a big difference in your lifestyle or even your day-to-day activities that you do. So it's always good to bring that up, because I think that we underestimate that, and they compile, like I said, they just, we keep creating things and doing things and having things, like even the stupid receipts. How silly is that? But how great is it just to say, no, you can throw it away.
Yeah,
you don't need it.
Absolutely. And what's crazy to me is that there are so many chemicals that are banned outside of the United States that are completely legal to put in our products, our food here. And I mean, it's just, again, the conspiracy theorist in me, that everything ends up coming true anyway. That they, air quotes, are not looking out for your best interest. And so they will greenwash labels of food to make you think that they're healthy. I'm telling you, turn over food, packaged food, and read ingredients. That has to be a habit. And don't assume that because it looks healthy on the outside, because they have all of the right, bells and whistles, and it's the right color, and it's the right, low sugar, keto or whatever. And then you turn it around and it's crap ingredient after crap ingredient. Again, are you feeding your body the wrong fuel? Because guess what? If you put diesel in a regular car, it's going to be dysfunctional. And if you put crap in your body, you're going to have dysfunction.
What a great full circle moment.
Yes.
That was good. That was good. So we've this, I think, which doesn't surprise me. I think it's the longest podcast we've had, and I could literally talk to you forever, but you have patience. And I have a workout to do. And so I'm going to end this, but I would love for, and everything will be put in the show notes, but I would love for people to know all the places that they could find you. I mean, you didn't even mention that you have your spa, which I got the joy, Shanti and I, to go and get spoiled. Man, that is Disneyland, Disneyland for any woman. It's incredible. So please share, this, because you are all over the place, which is a good thing, where people can find you.
Yeah, thank you so much. So on Instagram, my personal Instagram is Dr. Lauren Fitz. So it's DrLaurenFitz. And you actually do have to type my full name out, because I'm one of the many people that they have shadow banned, because I talk about these kind of things that empower people to not purchase certain things that are basically big endorsers, right? So you actually have to type it, and it's best. And I know, Melissa, you've shared this before, go make my profile a favorite and star it so that it can show up, because even if you follow me, my stuff will not show up in your stories and in your news feed unless you favorite the account, because they don't want voices like ours to be heard at the end of the day. The Larimar Med, that is my business here in St. Charles, Illinois, which is the suburbs of Chicago. I see patients online. I only see patients in the United States, but I do telemedicine. I've got a website, larimarmed.com, where we sell the highest quality supplements. And I start all of my patients on these supplements. I use them myself. But our Larimar Med LLC Instagram is where we do a lot of just specific Larimar stuff, but we do everything from the functional medicine to IV lounge to aesthetics. And yes, we do Botox and fillers and all of that kind of good stuff. We do Morpheus, we do red light therapy, all of the things that I use, we have here. And then my Facebook, I do have Facebook, Lauren Fitzgerald. I just every now I'll use Facebook only because I can stream into Zoom or from Zoom, so I can share my screen and do some teaching. So I do post on the Lauren Fitzgerald, my personal account, every now and then. And then my YouTube channel is where most people know me from, even though I haven't used it in years, but it's the Club Fitz Fitness. I think I have like 320,000 subscribers, but that was back in the day when I was doing dance fitness on a regular basis. But I did a live stream last Saturday, which I know you watched, and it was nice. Once a dancer, always a dancer. So I'll probably start to use that a little bit more. But my YouTube channel, the Club Fitz Fitness, and then the Fitz and Healthy podcast, I'm going to actually start doing more teaching on the Fitz and Healthy podcast YouTube channel. I'm not necessarily going to do the podcast again, but that's what the name of the YouTube channel is. So those are all the places you can find me.
Well, too bad I can't find you in my living room. I'd love for you to be here right now. But that is a true testament to you, because you've always had 300,000 plus followers on YouTube, and you kind of backed away from doing that, and they didn't leave you. They love you that much that they stayed. That's a true testament to how much they love you. And
I've got incredible followers.
Yes, and they're sitting there waiting, like we're just waiting for that next dance. So thank you so much for giving your Thursday morning to us. I've been wanting to, ever since I started this podcast, and I told you this, and it was just finally nailing it down, because you and I are both so busy. Yes. And since it was friend to friend, I'm like, let's do it. Let's do it next month. And you're like, okay. And then 2 months go by, and it's like, well, maybe we have time this month. So
2023, we finally got it done. Yes,
I apologize for the following, because I kept telling them you were going to be on. They were anxiously awaiting, and I appreciate your time, your knowledge, your big heart. And every person needs a Lauren in their life. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I think you are an incredible human being. And there's very, very few people that inspire me as much as you do. So thank you.
Well, I feel the exact same way about you, and you already know that. So thank you. I appreciate the time.
You're welcome. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. I know you did. Please follow Dr. Lauren and give her love. And as I always say, I want you to wake up feeling prepared, and I want you to go to bed feeling proud. Have a great day.
Bye.
Wow, we've reached the end. But before I leave you, I'd love to hear from you. After all, it's not every day that someone reaches out and asks for your opinion. And to me, your opinion does matter. So please share this episode with anyone that you think needs to hear this message. And remember to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. My name is Melissa McAllister. And until next time, thank you for being your own health advocate.